Last week we had Adam Birnbaum, and he shared on a joint project we're doing with Healthy Families and our role in trying to bring an outdoor recreation center by working in partnership. And so today we have Daryl Trowbridge from Healthy Families of Clallam County to present their side and what their initiatives are in our community. So Daryl has worked for Healthy Families of Clallam County for 11 years as a domestic violence, sexual assault victim advocate and prevention specialist. In his work, Daryl meets with clients to assist them with moving forward from abuse and presents in schools throughout Clallam County in an effort to keep youth from experiencing or perpetrating domestic violence or sexual assault. Daryl has lived in Port Angeles for 40 years and is a husband, father, and grandfather. Do you want to be a Rotarian? Oh. although he doesn't look nearly old enough to be a grandfather. He has worked as a community educator in another field, a graphic designer, sign maker, a paraeducator, a nursing assistant, and even a fitness instructor. Although in his words, you wouldn't know it by looking at him today. Daryl is a ventriloquist. Oh, we need a ventriloquist.
Yeah, we don't have
one. Yeah, we don't have one. Employing a host of characters in his prevention work in elementary schools and for children's stories in church. An artist, a writer, a motorcycle rider, harmonica player, and an accomplished and proud pun meister. Oh, after my heart. Canadians love puns. Daryl also loves to sing, so if you ever have occasion to go on a road trip with him, he will regale you with hits from especially the 70s and 80s, and you won't even have to ask him to do so. I'm so happy to have Daryl here this morning to share about Healthy Families, and you could throw in a few sniglets.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Well, good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Any chance I get to come into the community and talk about Healthy Families is something that I enjoy doing. One of the things that I joke about is that I can shut down a dinner conversation in no time flat. If people ask me, hey, Daryl, what do you do for a living? And I start to tell them, they're like, can we talk about anything else? Because nobody really wants to talk about, it's not fun to talk about domestic violence or sexual assault. Although on occasion, if I can share a story about one of my clients and the difference that we've made in a person's life, those are pretty inspiring. But just the general topics of domestic violence and sexual assault, it's like cricket, and I find that, the more we talk about it, the more awareness we bring to it. And I was just at Crescent School yesterday, and we were doing the prevention summit, and I got to do presentations to nearly 100 students, and from middle school all the way through high school. And at the end of one of the presentations, one of the teachers came over to me and she said that she's glad that I came, partly because there's a student she's working with that has not been ready to share much about her story, but she knows that there's some really ugly things that are going on in the family. And she says, I think she's now ready to start talking. And that's part of the benefit of doing prevention education is I'm hoping to help stop things from happening, stop people from becoming perpetrators, even accidentally. A lot of people that become perpetrators don't do it on purpose. It's just that they don't understand what lack of consent looks like. Okay? And so invariably, though, when I go into the schools, somebody finds out, wait a minute, what's been going on in my life? That's not okay. It might be normal. We make a distinction between normal and healthy. And it might be normal, but it's certainly not healthy. And so we end up helping people who are going through things in the process of trying to prevent further victimization for other kids. So, and adults. So that's one of my passions. I think that's one of the reasons why I am still with Healthy Families. I think the burnout rate is usually about 5 years. And so I think that knowing that I'm out there doing that work as well as doing the individual helping work makes a difference and feeds my soul. I was talking with Leslie. She asked me if I would come here today And she wanted to make sure that we let you guys know some of the statistics because, you know, not the statistics about how rampant it is, but the statistics or the numbers, the data about the people that we're helping in the community. This last year, from July 1st to the present, we have worked with 544 unduplicated clients. Okay. 308 of them have domestic violence in their background. 139 are sexual assault victims. And there's some combination between some of those two. And with our crime victims program that we've started about 2 years ago now, we've served 183 crime victims. And crime victims services differs from domestic violence and sexual assault because it can be anything. If you come outside one morning and somebody has broken into your car, that's a crime. If somebody hits you, hits your car and then drives off, that's a crime. So it doesn't have to be around domestic violence and sexual assault, which was what we focused on for so many years. We've now expanded to more of a comprehensive victim advocacy program. Okay. And we have 2 advocates that work that program, and they're loving it, and they are very busy. And sometimes they have to be told to go home because they just have so much work and they want to help. Their hearts are into it as well. We have housed in our emergency housing 28 women and 48 children and one male. This is we have 6 apartments that we use to provide housing so that people aren't on the streets. They have to be, according to our grants, they have to be homeless because of intimate partner violence. So it differs from, I don't even know how else to say it, regular homelessness. But it has to have that component of being caused by intimate partner violence or fleeing from intimate partner violence. We have also housed in hotels 46 women and 42 children over the course of this July 1st to now period. So we also have Rose House, which is our transitional housing program. And the women and children who go into Rose House, they actually come from our emergency housing program. So we don't take people who are just, I need a place to stay. We want to make sure that they're a good match for the clients that are already in there. Because the people who are in there are not in crisis right now. We don't put people in crisis in there. We do that through emergency housing. And then once we get to know them, then we have a panel interview with advocates and with the residents of Rose House to see if they feel like this would be a good fit. And Rose House, where we're hoping for to get the play equipment replaced because the old equipment just wear and tear, and kids, synonymous. We had to get rid of it because it was no longer safe for them. But this is a home, a large Victorian home on 5th Street. It houses, we have 6 rooms, and so we can have up to 6 families. If the family has maybe teenage kids, we might have the mom and a younger kid in one room and allow the teenager or teenagers to have a room of their own, which is really important because if you're in a homeless situation and you're a teenager, that's like double damage. So we try to be very thoughtful about how we place and how we help and position some of the folks that come in. So we had an incident a number of years ago, a couple of years ago, 2, where we had some flooding upstairs at Rose House, and we had to do a huge overhaul because when the water got into the ceiling and then into the lower levels and into the walls and into the wiring, we had to shut Rose House down for quite a while. But after that, we got it refurbished and it looks beautiful. And the women who live there they're so grateful for this place to stay. This program is a 2-year program, up to 2 years. And it's basically, we take their rent is 20% of their income. So if they only make $1,000 a month and they have a couple of kids, they're only paying $200 a month rent. We have an additional 10% come out for savings for them. So if something happens to their income and they can't make rent, we can pull that over. But if they don't have any rent issues, if they don't have any anything like that, they they forget about that 10% is extra. And so when they leave the program, they can get that 10% back that we've saved for them. And we had a client who a number of years ago, she stayed with the program for about 2 years, totally forgot about that 10% going to that. And when she got the money back, she was able to buy a decent used car for her and her family. So just a lot of different ways where we're trying to help people because, as you know, housing around here is really tough to come by, and it's really hard to afford. So we're trying to do just trying to do all that we can to help out as many people as we can. And unfortunately, we can't help everybody. We try. We have collaborations with a lot of different organizations around the community. We are constantly working with Housing Resource Center and Peninsula Housing Authority. Just found out the other day we got another family into the Sea Bridge program, which is a referral-based program through Peninsula Housing Authority. So that always feels good when we get somebody who's able to get safe, stable housing, especially in this community, especially when they've come from something so awful. Just a little bit more about the work that I do in the schools. You might have seen, I walked up here with a bag. This is a very common thing for me to be seen with, a bag like this or a large suitcase, because I bring. I don't just go to the schools. Now with the older kids, yes. I just go to the schools and I just work with them myself. But when I'm working with the younger kids, I bring friends with me. Oh, you're my friend? I am your friend. Woo! All right, this is my friend, Gooby Ooby. Hello there, Earthlings. And how do I use puppets in the classroom? Well, this guy here is so lazy, he makes me do all the work. No. No. What we do, especially with this guy, I actually have quite a few puppets, and 3 of them are purchased for healthy families. They purchased them for me, and this is one of them. You bought me? I bought you. There's something wrong about that. Okay. Well, how I use Ooby Ooby is we go to the classroom. He has crash landed on our planet. And would you like to tell them why you crash landed on the planet? Well, it's kind of embarrassing, but I was texting while I was flying my spaceship. And he crashed into an entire planet. You said no judgment. Okay. So what we do is, because on his planet, everybody looks the same. We are gorgeous. Yes, you are. And because everybody's good at the same thing, everybody likes the same thing, and everybody communicates telepathically. I can't read anyone's mind in here. Well, that's because we are not of your planet. But it's because there was no brain activity. Oh, stop that. Sorry. So what we do is I bring him in, and he's going to be here for a while because his spaceship is going to take a while to get fixed. And what do? We have the kids teach me what it means to be a friend. That's right. So instead of me going to the schools, and I'm gonna put you away. You're rude. Because it's part of my philosophy about educating with the kids is I don't want to just come in and tell them you should do this, you should do that. I want kids to hear from other kids what it means to be a friend, because if they're hearing what their friends are saying about what it means to be a friend, then it's that social learning environment. And so I have been doing prevention work in 2 different fields for 15 years now, and I love almost every minute of it. Granted, there are some days that don't go as well as I'd like to. Some of the high school students nowadays are a little bit surly and too cool for prevention education, but I try, and it really makes me feel good when somebody comes up to me. I actually met somebody at Subway. My wife and I went there for dinner one night to grab some food, and there was a young lady behind the counter, and she said, "You're Daryl from Healthy Families, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I remember some of the things that you taught in some of the presentations you did, and I was able to get out of a toxic relationship before it escalated." And just warmed my heart to know that I'm doing some good work. So a Healthy families is, again, like I said, it's not always a fun thing to talk about because it's an ugly subject. But if we can make a difference in somebody's life, you mentioned homelessness. I haven't experienced homelessness, but I've moved around a lot because a little bit about myself. Kathy, you said I could. I had a con artist for a stepdad. Didn't know it at the time, but he was always keeping us ahead of the con. And so we were always having to move. I was always a new kid in school. When I gave my very first presentation in high school where I had to stand up and talk to people, I literally stood with my paper in front of my face like this, because if I made eye contact with anybody, my eyes would tear up and I wouldn't even be able to read what I had on my paper. That's how shy I used to be. Also growing up in a home where abuse was the norm. Again, normal. Normal is a really weird word because whatever you experience long enough becomes your normal. And so growing up in a home where I was told on a regular basis that I was stupid, that I was bad, that I was not going to amount to anything, that I didn't matter, took its toll on me. And so for me to be able to do this work, I have a strong faith. I believe God brought me to my wife, who helped, instead of taking advantage of my low self-esteem, she worked to help bring my self-esteem up and help me to become the best version of myself. And that's one of the things I like to talk to students about is when you are with somebody, your partner, you need to be partnered with somebody who wants to help you become the best version of yourself, not the best version of who they want you to be, the best version of yourself. And if we, through the work that I do at Healthy Families, the work that the other advocates do at Healthy Families, that's also what we're doing. We're helping people come from a bad situation, helping them to unlearn the ugliness that they've been taught about themselves so that they can become the best version of themselves. And it's not glamorous work, but man, is it fulfilling work. So, and one last story that shows how huge of an impact in such a quick, short amount of time. Last year, actually it was this month last year, I got a call from the hospital, and there was a woman who had been badly beaten, and I was the person on call, and so I responded, and I ended up talking with this woman for quite a while, meeting with her for a bit, and then she went home. Her abuser was locked up. I watched court that day, and he was released on his own recognizance because none of the stuff that he had done in the past had stuck. So he didn't have this official record of convictions of domestic violence. And a no contact order was issued. He was not to call her, not to talk to her, not to even through a third party, not to go to the property, nothing. Very first thing he did when he got out of jail, he called her and said, "Come and pick me up." Now, this is a man who had given this woman a concussion. She should not have been driving. He shouldn't have contacted her in the first place. He was violating the no contact order by doing that. And I happened to get a call from prosecution. It was after hours. Got a call from prosecution. They said they've been trying to reach this person and they can't get a hold of her. Could I try? So I called her, and she was driving to come to Port Angeles to pick him up. And I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I have to, because there would be hell to pay if she didn't." That's her life. That's what she knew. There would be hell to pay if she didn't. As much as she didn't want to be around him. So I told her, I said, he's violating the order. He is not allowed to talk to you. You need to go home. And she says, I have to go. Would you just call me later on to make sure that I'm doing okay? And so I hung up and I called law enforcement and I said, I need to report this. And I found out from her whereabouts she was supposed to pick him up at. And I happened to drive around that area at the time when I got to see law enforcement putting him back in a patrol car. He went back to jail over the weekend, stayed in there longer than that. But during that weekend, we were able to get her connected with her parents, who she hadn't spoken to in a couple of years because of this guy. They were able to get her a ticket to get out of the area. And she is still away from him. There's been no contact. He has no idea where she's at. And that's huge. We don't have stories like that for every person, but I can guarantee you the people that we do help, they feel the same. as if that was their story. They feel the same because every bit that we can help a person recover from their abuse, recover from their homelessness because of the abuse, recover from the ugly things that they believe about themselves because of the abuse, that makes a world of difference to these folks. And so, thank you for allowing me to come and share. And yes, I was going to questions.
I want to ask you the first question. I grew up in a family where there was none of this. I mean, we as kids, we never saw sexual abuse for kids ever. On my wife's side, she had seen, and she had seen it with friends. I had no idea there was no help for those kids 60 years ago. None. There was nobody to help. The laws didn't support them. The difference between then and now, where there's laws that support the kids and the abused spouses, is it, and organizations like yours that do great stuff, is it going away?
No. That's the easy answer. No. I believe that it is, in some areas, it is reducing because the more we can create awareness about it, the more people are willing to talk about it. But this is a job that I liken to, not in always, but to firefighters, to law enforcement, to ER doctors. We are always going to have work to do. And that's the unfortunate thing. Because in the process of getting people to understand what it is, people find out that this is what has been happening to me. And so there's always more clients coming in. I believe that we're making a difference, and there are some people that say that, sexual assault in particular, there's a coalition of programs in Washington State. And one of their things is that, we believe that sexual abuse is 100% preventable. And I disagree with that because you can't convince all people not to rape or sexually assault. And because we can't convince everybody of that, it can't be 100%, but we're going to do our darndest to try to raise awareness, because if I can keep a kid from perpetrating a sexual assault because now they know when they can and cannot give consent, or when their partner can and cannot give consent, and maybe they stop and think about it, maybe this is not the right time. I don't hear those stories, but if I can do that, that's a good thing. It helps that person not to become a sexual predator or get a sex crime charge, but it also helps another person not to be a victim. And so going into the schools and teaching the kids about, what consent looks like. And we start with the young ones. We don't talk about sexual stuff with the little ones, but we talk about, this is your bike. How would you like people to treat you regarding your bike? Would you like them to just take it and run off with it? No. So if they ask you and you say yes, then that's consent. If you say no, that's not consent. So if you're the one asking to borrow somebody else's bike and they say no, what should you do? And so I use a lot of the golden rule in my presentations, trying to help people understand in your interactions with your friends, with your partners, treat them the way you'd want to be treated. And so, I think that in this world, especially because of social media, and the prevalence of social media, it just seems like, and that's not that it's all blame, because it's how people use social media, I should say. I think that we're never going to get the full handle on it. But I think that in our area, we're doing really well compared to some other areas because we have the resources, because we have the crew that we do. So, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, is the presence of the internet and social media and things like that. I mean, I remember when my brother and I were growing up, bullying, quote unquote, or fights or whatever. I mean, after you left school and went into your neighborhood, whatever problems you had, come 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock was over. Right. And then if you had, I don't know, any sort of meet with anyone in the neighborhood, right? But it was always clocked, right? So even if you had someone in the neighborhood you had conflict with, come sundown, it was like, all right, now you're at home and you're just with your family.
Right.
So with, things like all the smartphones and kids getting them younger and younger, and Facebook and Twitter. And I mean, you're never disconnected
Right.
from where you started to where you're at now with that evolution of social media. What are you seeing? Because from what I gather, maybe, yes, there's physical threats still, but they're lesser, and it's more prevalent of the kind of online manipulation threats, right, kind of harassment. Is that what you're noticing as well?
Yes. Bullying is one of the topics we talk about, because we talk also about bystander intervention. So what do you do if you see it happening? And the kids are saying that there is bullying that's happening in the schools, but it's so much more online. And you're right, you can't get away from it. Even if you tell the children, and we do, and the parents do, and the teachers do, and they say, don't go on, don't go to those pages where you know that people are saying ugly things about you. And they still do, because they want to know, is it getting better? Is it, is somebody standing up for me? And if they don't see that, so it's not just after school, it's done until the next morning. It's all the time. And especially one of the things that we encourage kids to do is, when you see it happening online, say something about it. Be that person who speaks up and says, hey, that's not okay. Defend the person who is, it doesn't have to be a matter of right or wrong about what the person is being bullied for, because maybe somebody feels justified in, I was working with some students out at Crescent School. One of the kids was feeling like he was being attacked by the other kids because they thought he was doing something to some of the girls in the school, and they were taking matters into their own hands. So they felt justified in what they were doing. But it doesn't matter what your justification is or what your thought process is about doing the bullying. What matters is, if you see it happening, it's not that I'm defending this person and their right to do the things they're doing. It's that this is a human being. I wouldn't want to be bullied. I wouldn't want my friends, my little sister, anybody like that to be bullied. So I'm going to stand up against it and say, hey, that's not okay. We don't use this platform this way. And then reaching out to the person who's being bullied and saying, hey, if you need a friend, so it's trying to change the natural course of what happened with social media and try to bring it back around to something that can be positive whenever possible. So one of the other things that we see about technology, though, is the tracking of the abusers, or by the abusers of the victims. You can get an air tag from just about anywhere for minimal amounts of money, put it in a car, put it in the purse, hide it somewhere, and you know where this person's at all the time. You get abusers who will say to their partners, here's a message coming in. I need you to answer the phone right now. And it's a video call. And it's like, okay, I need you to turn around and show me where you're at. I need you to, as a way of making sure that they're not with somebody that the abuser doesn't want them with. It's technology has upped the game for some of the abusers and some of the bullies. And we're trying to help kids to know that, because we're not going to stop them from using it, but how can they use it in a much safer way for them, whether it's for online predators or bullying or dating relationships. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're providing transitional housing and up to a couple of years for victims. I guess what I was wondering is, what about for a youth, whatever age, that has been a victim? They're not going to be able to go into a home by themselves. What happens to them?
Okay, thank you. Great question. One of the things I failed to mention about Healthy Families is we have what's called the Children's Advocacy Center. We shorten it to CAC. And that's a place where kids can come and be interviewed, a forensic interview. So it's by a trained police officer. It's in conjunction with prosecution, so that they can make sure they're asking the right questions to hopefully get this kid out of the environment where they are harmed. Or if it's not them getting out of the environment, it's getting the abuser out of the environment. So you're right. You can't just take a 14-year-old kid and say, here's some housing. So what we can do is we can work with CPS, with law enforcement, with prosecution, with mental health services, and get the kids the help that they need to hopefully protect them from what's been happening. And in a lot of cases, that means getting that person either arrested or getting them out of the home so the child can be safe. So, but it's done at our office instead of down at the police station. When I was a kid and something happened to me, I got to be interviewed right at the police station. And I got to see some of the people being brought in handcuffs, walking right by the desk that I was being interviewed at. And so I'm glad that we have the space. And it's also recorded, so the child doesn't have to be interviewed over and over and over again by different people. It's on a disc, so that disc can be used. It can be provided to the defense attorney as well, so they know what the child is going to say, but the child doesn't actually have to have that direct interview until they're on the stand, if it's even necessary, because with the forensic interview, the way they ask the questions, they get as much detail as possible so that the defense attorneys will also know how strong of a case they have. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times that leads to a plea deal being taken. So the child doesn't even have to go and testify in the first place. If the child does have to go and testify, advocates can come with them, and they can be not necessarily, they can't be up at the stand with them, but we can be with them in the courtroom. We can be with them through any of the interviews they have to go through, any of the coaching for the, not really coaching, but the visit to the courthouse to see where they're going to sit and everything. So we can help them all the way through the process as well. And so they don't have to do it alone. And meet some great kids out there, some great kids that have been damaged, but also get to see them bounce back because they know that they're supported and they know that they're safe from their abuser now. And that's a good feeling. And I get goosebumps. Just I have one client in particular that's the case for. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much.